Welcome to WellMade, a conversation about the role of craftsmanship and sustainable design. We are so happy that you're here. This is a conversation that's ongoing in our office and among these panelists that I'm going to introduce in just a second. My name is Rafaela. I'm your hostess tonight. I'm the Director of Operations for Lawless and Lawless Design Shop. And we are, again, so grateful that you came out on a summer night. So these people really live and breathe the stuff that we're going to talk about today, and there's really no better three people that could educate us and give us perspective on some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. And this is Amelia, who is
a special guest.
Special guest. Very quiet, doesn't talk much yet, but very cute, very good to look at. Yeah. So to my left is Hannah Oravec. She's the founder of Lawless Design and Lawless Design Shop, a premier New England-based interior design studio known for its focus on wellness and design. As a Well AP, Hannah expertly integrates evidence-based design principles into her work, ensuring that every project promotes health and wellness. Next to her is Ken DeCoste. He's the owner of Materia Millwork, a high-end cabinetry and millwork firm known for pairing exceptional craftsmanship with thoughtful project management. With more than 15 years in the industry, Ken has worked on everything from intricate furniture to full home cabinetry packages, always with an eye for detail and a commitment to top-tier results. Backed by a talented team, he brings a collaborative, solutions-driven approach that bridges the gap between design vision and practical execution. And to his left is Nick. Nick is the founder of NS Builders, a Boston-based firm known for redefining what it means to build with craftsmanship, integrity, and precision. His projects aren't just beautifully executed, they're intentional, high-performance homes that marry architectural vision with rock-solid execution. So these people know a lot. And I just want to jump right in and not waste a second more. And I want to start with the big picture question. And to get us started, Nick, I want you to start us off with this question. What does craftsmanship mean to you, and why is it so essential in today's fast-paced world of design and construction?
I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I know you gave me a time limit. In terms of craftsmanship, I think about how we build and what we build, and when you talk about the fast-paced world that we live in, everyone wants something now, and time is oftentimes related to how well something is crafted. And internally, we talk constantly about how long some of these projects take. Why does it take so long? What is pushing the timeline back and back? And it typically is related to the quality of construction. And the unfortunate part is that as that becomes the sticking point as to why a project doesn't move forward or why it's too expensive to build that we shift the mindset into, well, you can build it faster or you can build it cheaper and you can do it by substituting this. But the problem with that is you ultimately are sacrificing for the long-term payback for a short-term result.
Yeah, absolutely. Any thoughts on that from you guys? On why craftsmanship, what does it mean to you when you hear that word? And why is it, a part of your values and mission in the work that you do?
For me, I think craftsmanship really starts in the planning phase. It's an idea that is very well thought out from the start, right? So you are looking at all of the intricate details, you're taking these material selections, and then beyond that, you're going into fabrication. Something that we'll probably touch on a lot today is this uncompromised execution. And really what that means, I think, is if we are trading quality or not trading quality for speed, time, cost savings. And I think the true craftsmanship in there is to not give in to those temptations there and just have that integrity to, push that project forward with the utmost quality and like I said, just kind of not fall into that trap of getting it done quicker, out the door faster, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The uncompromised is interesting because I think a lot of times when people hear that, they expect when you're building something without compromise that it's just immediately going to be more expensive. And even internally, my team will push back and be like, Nick, that's more expensive. You're just making this more complicated. But my approach to building, and you can see this in a lot of our projects, is that we don't want to just take what is the initial thought. It's like, what is the intent here? And are we making this decision based on what is available to us, or what the first thing that we know it can accomplish this? Or are we really thinking this all the way through and kind of peeling it back to what it is and how it's made? And I think when you hear the word uncompromised, you in craftsmanship and even quality, you're just immediately, kind of centered around the cost of that. Yeah. But I challenge that with anyone. It's like you can build really high quality and uncompromised projects and not do it at a scale that makes it unaffordable. Yeah. And oftentimes that is related to the size of the home or the size of the project, where I'm going to go over my time limit, but
I already did.
I told you, one question I can talk. But ultimately, we have kind of, there's all these things that play into a home for us, right? Like, the market, how big it is, what's the cost per square foot, how many bedrooms does it have, all of that stuff plays into it, and we challenge that. And I think that we have the wrong incentives to build homes where if we can build something that lasts longer and people live in longer, ultimately that pays back over time.
Yeah. Something that you both touched on with your answer is that craftsmanship takes time. It's slow. You have to really think about it. And I know that well thought out design is one of Lawless's value, along with sustainability. And so I'm curious to know, well, I know because I work here, but how does sustainability show up in your work? Not just in the materials that you're choosing or that you're suggesting to clients, but how does it show up in mindset and process? Because I think, you're all three of you are leading companies, right? And you're leading people. And so if you're going to say, we're going to be focused on good quality work that's going to last, sustainability, all of these things, you kind of have to model that for the people who are working for you and then also for your clients, right? And so how does that show up in your mindset and process, like on the everyday?
Yeah, I mean, what Ken said, thinking about a project, planning it, really thinking about how something is going to be built before it's built. A very specific example is the way a home is framed. And for years and years and years, we have raw material dropped to a job site, and then we're taking stick by stick, sheet by sheet, cutting it and assembling it on site. And interestingly, it's like this new wave of like, oh, we can do that in a factory. And like, what else can we do in a factory? We can put the windows in. And that's just a specific example, but when you think about a project, like what happens with panelizing specifically is that it forces you to think about how the home is built before you get on site. Yeah. And if we were, we had kind of two jobs back to back. One we stick framed, and then the next one we panelized, and dozens of questions, very slow process, stick framing it, lots of conflicts, just issues that we need to figure out in the field. Where the other one, we spent months of planning it, and then we framed it in 6 weeks, and not a single question came up. Yeah. And that mindset going into it can be applied all the way through a project, and it allows you to, I always say you're building the project on paper before you actually build it. Yeah. And that saves material, it saves time. Time is money, and it's labor, it's everything. So, I'll second what Ken said. It's really about thinking about the project and really going into it with a better plan.
Yeah, Hannah, I know when you started Lawless Design, one of the focus was sustainability, and so that's very near and dear to your heart. And tell us a little bit what that looks like what's your mindset around that, and what is the day-to-day process, including sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. When I started Lawless, I really looked at it as I wanted to take my family roots and start something. That's where the name Lawless comes from. It's a family name. And so taking something that also felt like it was kind of an homage to our design style and, taking risks and doing things a little bit different. And so I've always resonated with wellness and design and realized over the years how much there is a strong correlation between the two, and how sustainability, wellness, all of those different factors can really affect your everyday health and your daily life and how you function. And so with starting Lawless, I really wanted to focus on wellness and sustainability and looking at, not just making things look pretty, because I think that's easy when you're a designer. It's easy to make things look nice, but going deeper. And what does that mean about being more intentional and more mindful and thoughtful about things? To Nick's point, planning things ahead of time, putting thought and time into something and not just building or designing something just to do it, but creating these personalized spaces for everyone that people are going to love and cherish for years. So sustainability for us can look at how something is made, but it could also be taking something vintage from our shop. We use a lot of vintage and mix in new and old to create those timeless spaces that do sustain, which really, I think sometimes people think sustainability is just about being green, but it's really how long something can last for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of what craftsmanship really means at every level, because you guys are in different trades. So Nick, you are the one who's making it, you and your team, you guys are the ones that's making it happen on site. What are the long-term differences you see in projects built with care and quality versus those that cut corners, for all the reasons you previously mentioned?
My wife and I have this joke about these buildings that get built where we live, and we have this running joke about how long it will be until they tear it apart because they're being thrown up so quickly and poor quality, and I sit there and take a bunch of photos and point out all the issues with them. And there's a lot of things that lead to that: lack of education, lack of compensation, lack of planning and thinking it through. But ultimately, you end up with a product that is complete but does not last. Yeah. And there's in construction and residential construction, and there's so many things that have driven us to build more complicated buildings. Energy costs. Now there's this huge, continues to be a huge shift towards more efficient homes. And when you get into more efficient homes, you're adding a multitude of layers to that, where it's the wall assembly, it's the windows. How do you make higher performance glass? And what does that mean? It's like, well, now I want windows that are floor to ceiling. Well, it's like, that makes it really complicated. Well, you can do that with steel. So the homes have just continued to get more and more complicated, and then pair that with the requirements of being a high performance home and perform at or above the required code. Going back to my point about education, is that they're being built, and a lot of times they're being built at kind of a passing level. And the unfortunate part is that those materials that go in, if you're designing at a passing level, the likelihood of it being built to that level is even less. Yeah. So if you're going in, trying to get a D on your test, and ultimately you're going to end up with an F, but the product was designed at a D, so it should pass. Right. And that's ultimately what is happening with a lot of this lower quality construction, is that you're incentivizing the wrong thing. They're getting built at a poor quality, they're delivered, they're done, they move on, and then you're seeing the repercussions sometimes a year later, sometimes 5, sometimes 10. Yeah. But it eventually will show up.
Right. And it seems like NS is doing the exact opposite. And going,
yeah, I would like to think so.
And going against the grain and really taking time, and a lot more time and a lot more thought than I think most builders. And so with that, because you're doing something different, what are the challenges of trying to build something that's more sustainable? And how do you have that conversation? I imagine the client could be a challenge. And or are there other challenges, with like lead times or maybe subs or whatever? Like, I would love to know what that conversation's like, because they probably haven't really worked with someone who's doing what you guys are doing.
I'll give you an example, because there's a lot of layers to that. But windows, you touched on lead times. When you're ordering high performance windows, there's certain manufacturers that can do it in the States. A lot of times it's more cost effective to order it from Europe. That's 22, 24 weeks for lead time just for the windows to arrive in the US. You have to factor that in. That means you're thinking about windows prior to ever digging on site. So going back to the planning, but the conversation with the client, Windows is actually a great example, because you end up spending more on Windows because you need a higher performance window to meet some of these standards. Now, if I were to sit down with someone and say, hey, builder A is going to build you a very basic builder grade home. Your window package is $35,000, and I come in and I say, I'm going to spend $95,000 on your windows. You immediately think the house is going to be $60,000 more for construction. And when we're having these conversations with the client, we try to communicate, look at this as a bucket of money, and I'm taking some of the money, in this case, from an HVAC system and putting it into the window bucket. Because if I have higher performing windows, I can ultimately design a smaller HVAC system because it's not going to require as much heating and cooling because the home will retain that heat. Yeah. I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole technically, but like that's an example where we're trying to explain to the client, look at this holistically first and understand what the big picture is. And just to add to that is we're also talking about square footage and the size of the home. Right. A lot of these homes are just built, kids' bedrooms and spec homes are the most obnoxious thing in my opinion. Like they're 17 feet by 17 feet, filled with toys. Like
all the moms are like giggling.
It's artificial square footage to pump up the cost of square footage, right? So again, thinking about, do these rooms really need to be this large? Does your home need to really be this large? And what is the end goal here? And let's work backwards from that.
Yeah. And Ken, you're the one who's like filling these rooms with millwork and
Toys.
Tools, yeah. Toys, and I'm sure you can make anything. So you're really the hands-on craft of it all, and I know that when you're building, Lawless has worked with materia before, and I know that your intention is always to build something that's going to last, right? Very similar to when Lawless designs and when NS builds. So I'm curious to know, as a carpenter, how do you approach your work when you're creating something that's meant to be passed down for generations? Like, do you ever have that thought if you're like making a dining table, like in 70 years, like this might be in somebody else's home, and like what? Or am I going too deep? Like, is it not that serious?
Yeah, I haven't considered the 70 years. But there is certainly, we want to build quality pieces, right? So I guess that process for us starts all the way in the beginning in planning. We've kind of covered that. Next would be material selection. We want to make sure that we're using quality materials that are going to last. Those are going to be some of the first things to fail if there is an issue. So starting with higher quality material selection, the sheet goods, lumber, all of that, hardware. On the sustainability side, we're making sure we're trying to source, products that don't have formaldehyde, extra chemicals, stuff that's hidden in a lot of these products. You're dying over there, huh? Same thing with the hardware. Yep. So this is kind of another one you kind of touched on, the budget of it, where the hardware we use, it's from tried and true manufacturers. It's been around for generations themselves. They hyper-focus on one thing, right? Hardware, that's all they do. So we're going to use a product that is going to last 70 years, well, so we hope. And then the conversation, there's been times where it's been, oh, if we go with a different hardware, can we save some money? Yeah. And it's like, that's a drop in the bucket. Like the amount of cost savings between the quality hardware that we're using versus something else is negligible at the end of the day and over the whole project. So just using higher quality materials all around, from raw materials to hardware, and then it gets into like the build quality, right? So we're forward thinking, and our scope, our world is a little bit smaller than say building a home. So we're able to also hyper focus on certain aspects. Every case is built the same way. Every shaker door is built the same way. A good example of that too is today in the shop we have shaker doors, 5-piece doors that we're building, and if you guys know anything about the construction on those, they do have a small, mortise and tenon type joinery in there. We take it an extra step further. We'll actually add a fold through tenon in all of those at every corner for every seam to make sure that those pieces don't move over time. And again, lasting a very long time. We've done some testing in our shop between doors that do have these tenons and doors that don't. And the ones that do tend to last a heck of a lot longer than the ones that don't. So
the testing was very professional. It was a slamming on the edge of the table, seeing how
I would love to see the video.
We have a video.
Yeah.
Of course we do. And something that Nick touched on, prefabrication, and I feel like that's huge with furniture, right? Like something gets drawn at whatever point in time, and then thousands of it gets fabricated in whatever country, and then you can buy it on Wayfair for $300, right? And so what is the value? Obviously, you can expect it not to last. Like we all know, if you're gonna buy this IKEA dresser, it can only move one time, and then that's about it, right? But can you talk about the value of using traditional techniques or the hand-built methods versus prefab? Or do you combine them? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we'll combine the two. So I think when we think of mass production, we think of large automated machinery, right? So there's some takeaways that we can use and implement in a shop that does do more of the traditional hand-built side of things. CNC is a good example of that. All of our case parts are cut on a CNC. It saves us a lot of time, so our team is able to then focus on some of the more pressing matters that require a little bit more of attention and some detail, so they're not bogged down by, cutting this. A couple of those other benefits, though, are with that CNC machine, we're saving time, both in actual cut time and the processing time for breaking down all of the pieces. So what we can do is kick over all of our cabinet sizes to the program. The program will break them down, actually nest them onto as few sheets as possible, giving us the best yield. So again, we're less wasteful. Yeah. Then we're able to kind of take those and run with it. Where that technology fails, as of now, I'm sure with all of the AI developments, we'll see this change in a few years. But if there's, say, an imperfection on one of the sheets that we're cutting, the machine's not going to know that. The machine's just going to cut, and we would need to step in, make a new piece, or have the machine do something else to work around that piece. So I think that's where a lot of the value comes in with it being hand built. Is we're actually touching every aspect of this project, the final product, from the cabinet cases, inspecting each sheet, all of the edge banding, all of the doors. Every last piece goes through someone's hand. So like the quality control is, in my opinion, unmatched versus some of the mass production stuff. Every piece is a quality piece. You're not going to get, a piece that has a defect in it just because the machine spat it out. So I think really having that final personalized touch on everything is kind of helpful there.
Amelia agrees. Yeah. So, and I want to tie it all together because Hannah, you often connect the dots between vision, budget, and what actually gets built. And so how do you, a lot of times you're the first point of contact for a client. Like they have a vision of what they want, but then they reach out to you because they saw the pretty pictures. They don't have a builder. They don't know how this is going to get done. And then you start having that conversation, right, about like wellness, sustainability, quality, like why we design this way. How do you guide clients towards investing in quality, especially when fast furniture is so readily available and it's so tempting to just, let's order the thing that's in stock? Yeah. So what is that conversation?
Well, I think that starts from just the initial consultation and meeting with the client and just setting expectations up front. I think it's really important for clients to know how long something's going to take and then also what our values are. If a client isn't wanting to invest in key pieces or wait, a certain amount of time that, we see fit for a certain project, then if we're not aligning on the first call, we're not going to align down the road. And so I always like to tell a client, like, we're just not the right fit. And that's okay, because there's a designer for everyone. And I think that it's really important to let the client know that up front so that you're not having a bad relationship 6 months in. And so we're very specific about who we work with and partner with because we want that client experience to be great for them. I think that designing and building a home can be a really stressful process. And so for us, we want to be people's guides through that, and we want to make it easy for them and fun. So for us, when someone might not want to invest in pieces, and it doesn't have to be every single piece has to be a Kenda Cost coffee table, but those pieces are important in a home, not only because of the craftsmanship that's made, but I think also the story behind it, because that's a big part too of working with the designer is putting you into your home, infusing those elements that you really love. And that's what we like doing, of finding a vintage piece where someone that it's where you traveled on your honeymoon, or having that personal connection to your home, I think is so important, rather than just having something that 10 million other people have in their home too. And so that's what we really try to talk to people about.
You touched on working with people who have similar values. And if you've ever built a home or remodeled a home, you know that many, many, many hands go into the process. And so you guys spoke about your individual, thing and expertise, and I want to talk about how that all comes together, the collaboration. How can builders, designers, architects collaborate better to create more sustainable, lasting homes and spaces? What is that internal conversation like when the client's not on the call? That just got real quiet.
Let's make sure there's no clients in here. Well, I mean, you touched on it. It's about collaboration and it's about being on the same page. And I think where a lot of projects, big or small, fail is that we're not all marching the same way. And someone is trying to push a vision or a design, and the builder is coming in saying you can't afford that. And I mean, we've been in that position more times than I would like to be in, is that an architect is pushing something and ultimately the client can't afford it, and we watch these projects just evaporate. And so we think about going into that with a shared vision and understanding, how do we build this, again, like before we actually build it, how do we build this on paper together to something that makes sense? And for us, we put a huge emphasis on pre-construction. It's something that I talk about literally every day, and I'm constantly in discussion with our clients about it, is that this is the most crucial part of this project, regardless if we build this or not, because we need the opportunity to develop the design, to develop the budget, to understand how we're going to build it, work through constructability concerns, work through material sourcing, work through everything with the intent that by the end of pre-construction, we say this is how much it's going to cost, this is how long it's going to take, and this is what you get. And feel confident in that process. And unfortunately, that's just not, and it hasn't been the way that we go about residential construction for a very long time. And even today, as we preach it, I still have clients that get through 50% through that, and they're like, let's just sign a contract, I'm ready to go. Yeah. And next thing you know, it's like we're 25% over budget. I'm like, we're not 25% over budget. We didn't develop the last part of that budget because you want to start construction. Yeah. So that 25% contingency is gone. It's, we didn't have the chance. Because we didn't
think about it more.
Yeah, we hadn't thought about it. We carried $100 a square foot for stone, and you're spending $250 a square foot for stone. Mm-hmm. So it's really being collaborative in that, and you mentioned removing the client from the conversation. I think that is important because, again, it's very much a triangle, right? It's the contractor, whether it's the mill worker or the builder, the design team, and the client. And most of pre-construction should be the mill worker and builder and the design team. Yeah. Because we need to understand, as design is progressing, we need to be progressing with our schedule and our pricing and constructability studies, all of that at the same time. So when we do present to the client, they're not only saying, wow, I love it, you can also afford it. Right. Because oftentimes it's, wow, I love it, hey, you can't afford it. Yeah. and that hey, you can't afford it, comes 6-8 weeks later when we had the time to actually digest the drawings because we're getting them at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that too is, you touched on it, is having meetings outside of having the client in there, so you can talk about all of the ways that you have to do something that a client doesn't necessarily need to know about. I think a big thing for our team is you're not just hiring us to design something, but you're also hiring us to project manage. Yeah. And so taking that stress away. So we want to collaborate and talk to the builder and the millworker about all these little finite details that you might not know were thought of, but were thought of a lot. And I think that's really important for, clients to be able to have that trust in the design and build team, that they're handling all of those miscellaneous questions after having conversations about what the client values at the end of the day.
I'm just going to add, I think, and this might be controversial or not, I honestly...
Is it filming? Are we filming? This is a great content moment. Go for it.
I honestly think that clients should not be making decisions in a project. They are hiring us because they trust us. They trust our vision. They trust our design. They trust our build process. And I think that there's so many failures in a project when, whether we as the builder, my team, or the design team goes to the client and says, "What do you want to do here?" Yeah. where I have seen many successful builders and designers, they go in and when the client, they meet, they understand what the client is looking for, they go back and they come back and it's done. And they're like, hey, this is what we're gonna build. And when you present it as, hey, this is what we're going to build, there's, number one, there's confidence behind that. And the client's like, wow, they understood me. The rare case, I'm gonna say under 20% of the clients that say, wait, I want this to be more collaborative, fine. Like, just tell me what you don't want. You don't like anything? All right, I misunderstood, let's try this again. Yeah. But to go through thousands of decisions in a project and have that client have to make every one of those decisions, I think is a foolish way to do this. And I think that you create so much fatigue in the process, which is why, like, in general, there's this just negative connotation around building and designing. It's like, it's expensive, you're gonna be over budget, you're not gonna get what you want, the builder's gonna be a nightmare, the designer's gonna make it too expensive, like, all of that, because it's just fatiguing.
Yeah, and when the client gets to, I've noticed when a client gets to a point of fatigue, then they just want whatever is cheapest and fastest.
It's complete
yes.
compromise. Yep. So if you go, like, my advice is you go in and say, this is what we're doing. And for everything, for like whether it's a design decision or, hey, you know, pocket door doesn't work, right? Hey, we're gonna switch this to a swing door. Not like, what do you want to do here? And the pocket door doesn't work. And then the client's like, I gotta go research what a pocket door is and then understand what my other options are. Yeah. It's just you go in with confidence. This is what we're doing, and when they don't agree, they will tell you. Right. But most of the time, they're going to agree, and the project progresses.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, though.
Talk on the mic if you're going to push back.
Sorry. Because I agree, but I also think sometimes it's more difficult, makes our job more difficult when a client doesn't give us direction. So that's
I'm going to stop you because I'm not saying. Is this the rage bait that I do on social media?
Yes.
This is what I do?
Yeah. Exactly.
To clarify, I don't think that they don't give you direct. I think it's important to get that direction. But as you're going through the process, you're presenting it in a way that I'm confident behind this decision based on that direction that you gave me.
You should have led with that.
But this wouldn't be as entertaining.
No, because I mean, for our studio, what we do is we send a client questionnaire ahead of time. So we have, you know, all this documentation of everything down to what metal finishes do you like, to the bedding that you prefer, down to how you take your coffee. So when we meet with you, we have that here ready for you. So I think that there's a lot of upfront work getting to know the client because it's not just a one size fits all for everyone.
But when you get to the end of that questionnaire and you review it and you read it, you have a pretty good sense of what this project's going to look like.
Yeah, and that's from meeting with the client multiple times first, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this would be great.
I'm just gonna let you guys go. Yeah.
But that is getting the feedback and the direction from them, and then you're confident. You know what they like. You know when you present that bedding that you know that is something that they're going to enjoy based on that questionnaire. So I think yes, that is important. I'm talking about when you're in it.
Yes.
And you're not getting to know the client. When you're in it, you are speaking with confidence that this is what we're doing.
Yeah, you want to build a home that's going to look like them, but in the process, you know that if you bring certain things to them, it's going to hold it up because there are just so many options. And if you've never done this before, or if it's your first time, you're going to go on Pinterest. It's going to start a whole nother conversation, and then you decided on marble, and now you want quartzite because you saw that one picture. It's a whole thing. So I definitely understand what you're saying about get to know your client, understand how they live, what they want, their favorite color, the color they hate, whatever, and then be confident in what you're designing and what you're saying, hey, I think we should do this because of X, Y, and Z.
It's the difference between being a service-based business and a product-based business. And this is something Ken and I talk about a lot, where it's, you know, a lot of us feel as though we're in a service-based business, but when someone fills out the questionnaire and they tell you that they like Crayola colors and don't like coffee because they think it's the devil and all these other things that just like are red flags, you write it off because it doesn't fit your product. Yeah. And we, instead of being a service where it's like, hey, I don't care what your aesthetic is or what you do, I just need you to design my home based on what I tell you. That's not a good client. Right. You should be approaching this as, this is my product. Let me hear what you want and make sure that my product can fit that need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really insightful to kind of hear the perspective that you guys have from what you do on a daily basis and the conversations that you're having with subs and your own team and clients. And most of us are making choices every day, like what to buy, who to hire, how to renovate, or even just be more mindful in our homes. You don't have to do a full gut remodel to live in a more sustainable way. And so, these decisions matter. And I want to talk about how does this all apply to everyone who's here who might not be remodeling or might not be in the trades. What advice would you guys give to someone in the community who wants to make more sustainable, long-lasting choices in their own home? Hannah, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think that if you're not working with a design team or anything and you're looking to update your home, is to just go slow and be mindful about each selection, picking one piece at a time, thinking about what does that mean, how does that relate to other things in your home, and then investing in quality pieces when you can. I think vintage, like I said earlier, is a great way to find all different types of price points depending on what you're looking for. So that's really where I see a huge difference with interior design.
Yeah.
I think it's education. So whether it's picking out the bed sheets, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to find a sustainable fabric, things like that, through hiring a cabinet maker, through hiring a builder, it's just getting out there and educating yourself. There's so much information out there now that I think just spending some time researching it will do you good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's understanding who can be a partner in the process and who is going to consider all of the options rather than the easiest option.
Yeah, and something that we talk about at Lawless a lot is that sustainability. Obviously, we talk about sustainability when we talk about homes because that's our job. But I think it goes beyond that too, right? Like you want to sustain your body, you want to sustain your relationships, you want to sustain your mind. And what does that look like? Like often people come into our office and we're on our walking pad and like people are like, what's happening? We're like on our walking pad as we're typing or whatever, if we're having like a team meeting. And because we are sitting, 8-10 hours a day, and so that walking pad makes a difference if you can get on it, twice a day and walk for 40 minutes while you're working. And so I think yes, your home is important, but sustainability also goes beyond that, right? It's like what you're putting in your body. That's why we're so, meticulous about fabric and, VOCs and all that stuff. And so do you guys, how do you incorporate that in your family life? Because most of you have children or pets, and so how does that show up in your home, and what are just some easy things that you can do to make your home or your life more sustainable? You don't necessarily have to spend thousands of dollars, but what are just some maybe habits or things that you found that has worked for you and your family that is oh wow, this has actually made a difference over the course of 6 months or a year?
I think a big thing for me is wellness, and something that you talk about sustainability is something that needs to be sustained. So for me, having a daughter, as you all saw, I need to work out in the morning before work, because otherwise if I'm not doing that before she wakes up, then it's not getting done. And that's something that really matters to me. And I know I show up as a better person every day. I'm more efficient. I'm a better mom, a better business owner, better wife. And so we have a cow share that we do. So we have grass-fed beef in our freezer every night that we can have for dinner. We have our garden that I'm out there with Amelia each day picking stuff. And so we have healthy, fresh produce every day too. So I think those are things for me that make, my everyday a little bit easier, is doing those things to really just create a better, healthy lifestyle for me.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to, I gotta give my wife kudos to this because she's way better at it than I am, but just having an understanding of what you're doing. And food, for example, I think is just a big issue, and I think we can all agree on that, but it's just having a basic understanding of the do's and don'ts, and just understanding that there's a better option and it doesn't have to be more expensive. And just being aware of that and being aware of your surroundings, whether it's, health and working out, it's understanding that you're showing up as a better person and realizing that all those little micros do add up to the macro, and ultimately you're able to be a better person and live a better life.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was headed with this one. My wife too is also very into the good food and the holistic approach to medicine and stuff like that. So I kind of rely on her for a lot of this, but I think beyond that, it's the products that you're bringing into your home, like the furniture that you're bringing in. Like you said, you don't have to spend a ton of money on this stuff. There's options available. Look for products that have, like you said, low VOCs, things like that are just made a little bit more with wellness in mind.
Yeah, I feel like a theme, like a term that has come up a lot in different answers is taking your time. Slow down. Think about what you're buying. Think about where you're eating. Think about your habits. And it's so interesting that that's the key in a world that's moving so fast. You know, it's like you have to do the opposite of whatever the culture is doing or what the world is telling you to do, because we're so used to quick fixes, 2-day shipping, you know, one-click purchase. It's just the norm. Like, you just expect that now. And even in running a business, all three of you run a business, you know, there's constant pressure to optimize. You know, like, how do we become more efficient? How do we cut costs? How do we save time? Those are real things that we all think about. And so sometimes convenience wins, right? Like, let's just be real. Like, we've all DoorDashed at some point. Like, probably wasn't the best meal, but you're like, it's 10 o'clock, I don't have anything in my fridge and I'm starving. Like, and so we've all been there. But when it comes to creating something that lasts, there is a trade-off, like we've talked about. There's a lot of planning, it takes time, it's probably gonna be a little bit more money. So I wanna end with this question. Craftsmanship or convenience? Where do you draw the line? Ken?
Skip. No. I don't know. I guess
That's a hard
one.
I know,
Yeah.
it is a hard question.
You just thought you were going to wrap that up?
Yeah.
Thank God he went first.
So I'm the one that gives you guys the time to think? Yeah. Geez, I guess it's got to be quality. You know, there's a compromise somewhere in the middle of there between the budget.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to go out and buy a $10,000 dresser. You don't have to buy the $10 dresser.
Right.
You know, there's somewhere in the middle there that can bridge that gap, and for every budget too. So I think quality would be where I would kind of draw that line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that, and maybe from a food perspective, like health, right? Where it's, you know, craftsmanship or convenience. It's like I DoorDash probably more than I should, but I'm still looking at, well, can I get a quality meal from that? I'm not being overly convenient and unhealthy.
Right.
It's like, all right, what's my best option? I need something fast. Like I'm in the middle of something. I'll DoorDash it, right? So I think ultimately it comes down to making the best decision for, in that case, like the resource I have. Obviously I could go and get food or make food, but if this is my decision I'm making based on convenience, how do I make the best version or best decision based on of that version?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of it too just comes down to intention, and you know, to Nick's point, like, what's your intention for ordering? Are you just wanting food? Do you want something healthy? You know, what does that kind of look like? And so I think that with design, I mean, I feel like I always go back to vintage with, you know, quality. But if you're looking for something quality and convenience, I had a client the other day who wants something quickly, and they had made a joke in the beginning of the project saying like, oh, my parents' home is filled with all seats that you can't sit in because they fall apart, you know, and so they have this like funny notion about vintage. And you know, I said to him, and I was like, well, you know what is really quick and is already made is a vintage piece. And so I think that is always my default, is when someone wants something quickly, is, you know, pieces, you know, 40, 50, 60 years ago. I mean, I look at one of my favorite pieces in my house is my great-grandparents' coffee table that I had, and I remember it from my childhood. And when they passed, it was I was able to take that into my own home, and it's in the central part of my house where we walk by it every day. My daughter's now standing on it and doing all this stuff, and so it's like I remember my childhood with it, and now I know that that's going to be something that's passed down to Amelia that she's going to remember too. So I think that's, again, kind of tying back to that whole personal connection too.
Yeah, and I think it depends too, like what season of life you're in, right? Like if you're single, like you could kind of decide, opposed to like having a partner and then having kids, because now it's a bigger conversation. Like, where are we succumbing to convenience? Where are we going to take our time? Where are we spending the money? So I think season of life depends a lot too. I think the answer might change as you're in a different season of life.
Yeah, I'll end on this. I think that, again, something my wife really instills is that we tend to make the best decision all the time, but it's kind of like having the cheat meal, or okay, we're gonna eat Chick-fil-A or whatever. Like today, fine. It's once. And I think living with that mindset is a healthier way than trying to be 100% rigid, because in a lot of ways you could say that one way or the other like strips the happiness out of life, because you're so rigid and so concerned of every decision that you're making. But if you go into it, like you said, with intention, like what's my intention here, and look at it as the big picture, and then sometimes you're gonna slip, and that's okay.
Yeah. That was really good.
That's a hard question.
So that was my last question, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Nick and Ken, thank you for saying yes to this. Hannah, thank you for funding this. And thank you all so much for coming tonight and being a part of this conversation. It's been so cool to hear their perspective, but also to say hi to all of you and talk before this. We're going to have more networking time after the panel. But I just wanted to say this was just the beginning. WellMade will be an ongoing series where we're going to continue to explore intersection of wellness, sustainability, design. We're going to have more panels, more voices, and more conversations that matter and that feel real to the community, and not just if you're in the trades. But before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank the incredible sponsors who made today possible: Lawless Design, Materia Millwork, Nutmeg Table Company, Osea, and Fire Clay Tile. Your support helps us bring events like this to life, and we're so grateful. And we'd love to see you at the next one. In the meantime, hang out. If you have questions for these guys, they're going to be hanging out. Introduce yourself, pick their brain. They've been doing this for a long time. There's a lot of wisdom. If you want to get out of here within 20 minutes, don't talk to Nick. But let's keep the convo going. Thank you so much.